You are now listening to the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Almost Major, where we talk about the many major studios and the films they release. Today we are talking about Oldboy from 2013 as a part of our Film District miniseries. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Brian Doyle.
Hello.
And Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And joining us again is film writer Sam Cohen. How are you, sir?
Hello. Thank you for having me, Kevin, Brian, and Charlie.
That was oddly formal.
Hello, sirs. Yeah.
Yeah, it was ChatGPT. I had to step in as my
Sam and I hang out all the time in real life, so I'm allowed to tease him a little bit.
I'm taking a note from the Brewlist and just editing my own speech in real time.
There you go.
Oh boy.
Sam, you've been writing essays. What essays do you got incoming for Blu-rays? You got Gushing Prayer coming from TerraVision. What else?
Yeah, I got Gushing Prayer coming from TerraVision. What else do I have coming out? I'm trying to think. I actually, everything I'm doing right now, I actually can't talk about. So I'm sorry.
Kick him out of here. You won't spoil stuff. Okay.
I know. I can't spoil it, but yeah, you should definitely check out Gushing Prayer when it comes out from TerraVision. As far as Pink films go, it's one of the best.
Hell yeah, I will be picking it up. Oldboy, 2013, New York premiere, November 11th, 2013, and released on November 27th, 2013, in 583 theaters. Budget was $30 million. Opening weekend made $885,000. Domestic gross of $2.1 million and overall gross of $5.7 million. But home video sales, $1.5 million. I'm sure that helped. Top 5 films that weekend: The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, Frozen, Thor: The Dark World, The Best Man Holiday, and Am I Right, Brian? You saw Homefront in theaters, didn't you?
That's the one I rewatched recently. Because I saw this on Tubi. And I was like, I haven't seen this in a while. Why haven't I rewatched it? And I went to YouTube where VPS Films had posted it. And I was like, great, I don't have to watch this with ads. That movie's totally fine. I had a perfectly fine time going a Saturday night or whatever to watch it. I think I saw all those movies in theaters. Although Frozen, I associate with seeing it in January because I caught up with it like a couple months after it came out. But yeah, saw all those.
What a time, folks.
What was your favorite that weekend, Brian?
Probably Homefront.
I really like Best Man Holiday, which I weirdly watched
do need
before.
to watch that.
I saw The Best Man.
I haven't seen that.
I liked The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. That might have been my favorite.
Oh, that was the best one of the franchise, though.
Yeah, that was the best one.
They introduced Phil Seymour Hoffman in that one. Yeah, he's good at that.
Yeah, well, Phil Seymour Hoffman's in Mockingjay. I think it's literally 2 scenes in the last one where he's clearly CGI face.
Oh, I didn't know about that part, but yeah, he's not in it much. Yeah, because just what happened. Yeah, nobody saw Oldboy over Thanksgiving break.
Apparently not. It came in at like 19th place, sir. So, number 1 song in the U.S. this week, Royals by Lorde, and number 1 song in Canada this week is The Monster by Eminem and Rihanna. Canada's just losing. I don't know what to tell you.
Wasn't that, we were in a music league recently where the category that our friend Paulo Yama had put together was like sort of like, I can't remember what the exact name of it was, but like songs you like by artists you don't, and someone put The Monster in there, and we were like, this inspires a lot of questions. Which artists do you not normally like? I think it was Jack who said, like, and so to be clear, it's Eminem. I don't like Eminem.
But that one you like. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just thought that was so funny.
The song sucks ass. I heard it
It
live,
was a
and I
great
was
time to be a Lorde fan, I gotta tell you.
I heard that song a lot.
It was a great
song.
Oh, who did?
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say The Monster is not my favorite Eminem song, but I will take that over Houdini any day.
How about I just listen to good Eminem songs instead of those two? How about that? But Jack is also like 14, so he doesn't remember when Eminem was good. Plot description from Google. Although his life is already in a downward spiral, things get much worse for advertising executive Joe Duquette. Duquette?
Doucette.
Doucette. Oh, he's French. played by Josh Brolin. While drunk one night, Joe is kidnapped and thrown into solitary confinement in a bizarre hotel-like room. For the next 20 years, Joe suffers unimaginable torment, but the motive and identity of his captors remains unknown. When he is inexplicably set free, Joe emerges with one goal: to find the person who stole 2 decades of his life. He finds it. Written by Mark Protozevic. Prior to this, he wrote The Cell in 2000, hell yeah, Poseidon in 2006, I Am Legend in 2007, and after this, he's the creator and writer of 8 episodes of the show that definitely exists, Sugar, from last year. Are we going to bring up Sugar every episode now? Is that what's
Let's do it.
I mean, yeah, it still doesn't
But Dan
exist.
Mecca was on our episode talking about Dead Man Down with us, and he talked about Sugar and told us like what happens in it. Sounds like a wild show. I actually kind of want to watch it now.
Unbelievable.
Whatever's better than Dead Man Down.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the list is kind of limitless there. Directed by
remember
Spike.
when you guys did that episode, I was like, oh, Dead Man Down is forever imprinted on my brain because of that trailer that has that's cut to Shine On You Crazy Diamond.
Yeah.
And
Great trailer.
but it would play before every movie. So it became part of your DNA at one point. And of course it did its work, right? It got into your brain. It was like, you need to see Dead Man Down. And I did. And I regretted it.
Nah, yeah, it's not good. I believe the Red Band trailer was set to Breathe by Fabulous, and I'm sure that got me in the theaters, actually.
Oh, wow. I got to watch that. That's wild.
And for a second, I thought you were going to say Breathe by Sia. And I was just like
Breathe
the
by
6
Michelle
Feet Under
Branch.
finale.
Now, if it was set to Breathe by Michelle Branch, I would have been there at midnight. Like, hell yeah, dude. I feel like this doesn't fit at all. What is Film District doing? Directed by Spike Lee. Prior to this, She's Gotta Have It in 1986, Do the Right Thing in 1989, Malcolm X 92, Crooklyn 94, He Got Game 98, Summer of Sam 99, 25th Hour 2002, Inside Man 2006. After this, The Sweet Blood of Jesus in 2014. Was that the Kickstarter movie, or was...
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The Sweet Blood of Jesus.
Yeah. Chirac in 2015, Black Klansman 2018, Defy Bloods 2020, and his upcoming remake of High and Low.
With Ice Spice.
Yeah, very curious about what that's going to be. Because I am honestly not a fan of his like 2020s work. Besides, I watched Defy Bloods today and I thought that was great. So,
Yeah, it's awesome.
Charlie, what did you catch up on?
I have seen 16 Spike Lee movies as of today. For research, I caught up with Crooklyn and Clockers, both of which are very good. Crooklyn, especially, I found deeply moving, and has been certain scenes have lingered with me. And I've just like thought about just tiny little moments in that movie and have like swelled up just thinking about it. So, or my heart is swelled up just thinking about it. Clockers, is incredibly stylish. I love the way it looks. Shot by Malik Hassan Saeed. The cinematography is incredible in that film. He also shot Belly. Listen to our episode. It's not, that one's not one of my favorite Lee films, I'd say, but I love the everything he's doing filmily in it. Left me a little cold, but I also would watch it again in a heartbeat and would not be surprised if it went up on a rewatch for me. So
Yeah, I watched Inside Man. That movie's perfectly fine, man.
that movie's a blast. I don't
Why
know.
would you
It's
say-
perfectly
why would you
fine.
say that?
That's the platonic ideal of like Spike Lee doing a genre movie where like he is like has like sort of like the little digressions like into sort of like social commentary that I found like so interesting, and also just like weird little bits like when they're arguing about like the different transit locations in New York, and then like also having like those like suspense set pieces. I found that movie so fun.
Yeah. I like Jodie Foster's mysterious character who comes in as the fixer, who just, she doesn't really have much of a background, but she schools so many people, and it's just fucking so much fun to watch.
But the thing is, like, I thought I knew all that was in it. I was like, wait, William Dafoe's in here? Like, what? I was like, oh my god, the bench was deep.
Yeah, the bench was deep, and like nobody was. I mean, granted, people who had seen Spike Lee's films probably were expecting something other than normal. But nobody was expecting like this police thriller with like the anger that you've never seen in a police thriller before. And just like the force of everything. I mean, every character decision in the movie feels like it's part of a Spike Lee joint, just because of the story itself. It's just, well, let's just muddy everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you find out what's really going on at the center of that heist, you're like, oh, I see, and then it becomes and you're like, oh, this is absolutely a Spike Lee movie or a Spike Lee joint. I remember asking, because I was like 14 or 15 at the time when that movie came out, so I was at the point where my dad would start taking me and a couple friends to R-rated movies, and I was like, Dad, can you take me to see something? It was like a Sunday afternoon. He's like, okay, what are you torn between? I was like, Inside Man and Slither, and he was like, what's Slither? And I showed him like the poster for it, and he was like, ugh, no, I'll take you to Inside Man. Jesus, like
That would have been a hell of a double feature. Remember when the Who's Won't Get Fooled Again gets needle dropped at the end of Summer Sam? That fucking kicks ass.
When they actually like broke Adrian Brody's nose during the down scene.
Yeah. God,
Oh yeah, Kevin, I was gonna ask because you were watching He Got Game if you had seen Summer of Sam yet. So
that was my first Spike Lee movie. I saw that like in middle school.
oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like Inside Man was mine. It was a very basic Spike Lee intro.
I legitimately, this is just virgin energy that I had at the time and just continue to have at 32. I wanted to watch it because it was like one of the movies that like had the F word in it the most.
It does. It's still in the top 10, I think.
I guess when I was in middle school, I was like, they can't do that. I gotta watch this. And then by the end of it, I was just like, oh, I've learned a lot, actually.
I feel like a lot of Spike Lee movies must have been up there during that time too.
I remember that time I'd be like, I gotta watch the movie Nil by Mouth. I gotta watch that. Apparently it says fuck a lot.
Yeah, Summer of Sam was one of those movies where I was like, okay, well, let's see how he processes this real life event. And you got to watch it and like, okay, yeah, this is every bit the like crazy story about Americana that this needs to be. And plus, I think I had seen that just before moving to New York City, so it was just like, oh, it's so.
Oh wow, yeah, and features arguably John Leguizamo's best performance, and God, I miss Mira Sorvino so much.
A talking dog.
Oh yeah,
John Turturro's great, and yeah, it's such a great. I can't imagine what that must have been like to see it in 1999, thinking you were getting a film about the son of Sam Cohen, and you instead got kind of the most just a scathing portrait about toxic masculinity and the ways in which it just set the tone for that time period and how everyone lost their goddamn mind. So
released by the Walt Disney Corporation because it's the Touchstone Pictures production. It got D- cinema score.
It did. Oh my god, I forgot about that.
Goodness.
Well, wait, what did Oldboy have for a cinema score?
C-.
I don't think it got. Oh yeah, I mean, I saw something about that on Wikipedia, but like when I looked it up on Cinema Score's website, I couldn't find it. I wonder if it was because like it didn't meet the maximum number of theaters to be put out in. I mean, Kevin said like what, like
583, and I believe wide is 600 plus. So
no, I'm so sorry, I misread that. That's the IndieWire rating.
No, it's all good. No, I was confused about that too when I saw it on the wiki too, Charlie. So yeah,
read that one
good.
too quickly.
Well, talking about Oldboy is you kind of have to start with, is it a Spike Lee film or a Spike Lee joint? That's how he classifies the movies that he feels he probably have, or at least we can ascertain from the movies that the ones he has control over creatively the most, so probably are Spike Lee joints. And the movies that were either taken away from him or were under kind of terrible conditions, and he feels it's compromised, he'll say it's a Spike Lee film.
Yeah,
I mean, is this the only one with film attached?
Was it Chirac? Because that compromised 2 hours of my life.
Oh, sure. That's like a 5-star movie for Sam.
Yeah,
Chirac is great. I also remember our friend Trevor mentioned seeing Malcolm X in theaters and how that film starts with the incredible shot of the upside down American flag burning, and like he apparently was like leaning over to his friend being like, "Are we going to die?"
Strap in, folks. At least it's a short movie. No, it's 3.5 hours long. Does it feel long? No.
No, not for a
I'll have you guys
second.
know I did watch Malcolm X before I watched the Oldboy remake or reinterpretation.
Okay,
as
good.
Lee likes to call it.
There would have been serious repercussions if we'd found that out, and that, yeah.
It took incredible willpower. I was it was just like I was chomping at the bit to watch and that's often what I'm doing of like this saying, yeah, you made this like acclaimed like 3.5 hour movie. What's this like trashy Sean Rapise that you made? Like I'm often curious about that with directors.
Yeah, that sounds great. Which one of your movies is available to rent at Redbox real quick? That's what I need. This is starring Josh Brolin as Joe Duquette.
Doucette. Sorry.
Joe Duckhead. Prior to this, Mimic in 1997. I need to watch that. I'm surprised I haven't watched that. Hollow Man in 2000. Hell yeah. No Country for Old Men in the Valley of Elah, and American Gangster 2007. A hell of a year. W in 2008. We were all there for that. Nominated for Best Supporting Actor for Milk in 2008. Bryden's favorite 2013 film, Labor Day. After this, Inherent Vice in 2014. Sicario in 2014. Oh, fuck. Shit. I forgot Gangster Squad in 2013. My bad. And Dune Part 1 and Part 2 and Infinity War and Endgame as well.
Oh yeah. By the way, the article I can't remember which source it was, but like they said like something about like Josh Brolin's been cast in like Oldboy for Spike Lee. He's also set to shoot Gangster Squad, and he's probably gonna shoot Oldboy in between shooting Labor Day, which is set to come out. I'm like, wow, Brolin is maybe not doing so well in this part of his career.
How about you take all of these out back and shoot them as well? I want no parts.
I'm trying to find it right now, but I think Oldboy was the only one that was labeled a Spike Lee film.
Remember
think
when
so.
Kate Winslet gets kidnapped and her son get kidnapped by Josh Brolin in Labor Day, and then they manage to start escaping, but they stop in their tracks when they realize Josh Brolin has cleaned all the leaves out of the gutter?
Does that really happen?
Oh, yes, that absolutely happens. That movie's essentially, oh, well, thank God Josh Brolin kidnapped us and fucked my mom. Like, that's basically what that movie is. It is.
Horrible.
It absolutely is. It's like, what if maybe you should let the sociopath into the house and let him fuck your mom. Be grateful for mom's new boyfriend. Seriously, you need a male figure in your life.
What? It's called Labor Day
teach you
for
how
a
to-
reason. Come on.
Who can erotically, and I use that in worded quotes, bake pies with you in one of the, like, I'm not even kidding. There's an erotic pie making scene in that movie.
How do you get?
Come on.
Why are you guys looking at us like that? I don't understand.
I saw this in theaters, so I'm not like questioning this. Like I know it's in there.
Elizabeth Olsen as Mary Sebastian. Prior to this, Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, and Silent House in 2011.
One of those movies is a fucking masterpiece.
The one shot in
of
one
those
shot.
is awful.
Silent House. Saw it in theaters.
WandaVision?
Yeah, nominated for an Emmy.
Without spoiling, I remember seeing an early screening of Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, and when it just cut to black, everyone in my theater just went, oh, and I was just like, oh shit. Like, it made my blood run cold, but everybody was fucking livid. Like, they were about to tear the screen down.
Who
It's a
plays
great movie.
Who plays
It is
the
a
cult
great
leader
movie.
in Martha?
John
Marcy?
John Hawkes.
Ah,
So good in that.
That's
And
pretty-
Christopher Abbott and Brady Corbett are two of the other cult members, and Julia Garner. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of cast members in that.
Wow.
She was also in a movie that
Kill
I
Your
only know
Darlings.
exists. Yes, she was in Kill Your Darlings for like a scene, but she was also in a movie that the only reason I know it existed was because we showed it at the Kendall when I worked there, called Peace, Love, and Misunderstanding. It is an absolute fake movie with Jane Fonda and Catherine Keener of all people in it. And
I don't
Jane
think
Fonda's
it is.
got
Bruce
like
Beresford. Yeah.
Jane
wow,
Fonda's
geez.
got a very big hippie wig, if I recall correctly, in that movie.
She is also in the Josh Radnor directed Liberal Arts, where where there's like a 16-year age gap, I think, between her and Radnor in that.
After this, she played Nurse in Godzilla 2014. Ingrid Ingrid Goes West in Wind River in 2017. A whole bunch of Marvel projects and the miniseries Love and Death in 2023. Also starring Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Imperioli, Ziggy from The Wire Season 2, Rami Malek, Lance Reddick, and Brian, you gotta help me out.
James Rance and Ziggy from The Wire, who originally that part was going to be played by Nate Parker, who had been in Spike Lee's Red Hook Summer, but then Nate Parker dropped out because he had to shoot Nonstop, which came out a few months after this. That's a good movie. Other people who were considered for the villain role, Christian Bale, Clive Owen, Colin Firth. Interestingly, with Colin Firth, he was going to be in the... he was at one point attached to do the remake, or not the remake. He was going to be in Stoker, which is the English language film debut of director Park Chan-wook, who did
Great movie.
the 2003 Oldboy. Very good movie. And Rooney Mara was also passed on the lead female role, according to IndieWire. Yeah, I mean, like we were talking about, like some of the earlier iterations of this movie, like being a remake or a reinterpretation. Spike Lee keeps like hitting on that, how like, you know, it was like because the manga was like initially the thing. We'll talk about the differences with that. Spielberg was going to make this with Will Smith at some point. That ended up being like a rights issue where Futabasha, the Japanese publisher who did like the graphic novel, they were suing them over about like who had the selling the rights to the US. I guess when that wasn't okayed. That fell apart in 2009. And then there was also Justin Lin when he was coming off Better Luck Tomorrow. I think he signed on to do it, but then he said that they basically wanted him to just remake the Korean film, so he just sort of didn't do anything with it. And there is a script, though, written by his Better Luck Tomorrow co-writers, Ernesto M. Ferranda and Fabian Marquez. Sorry, what were you going to say, Charlie?
Nothing important. I was just going to say, if Justin Lin remade Oldboy, everyone would be played by a car.
This is after Tokyo Drift. Yay.
Lightning McQueen.
That's why he dropped out. He was just like, getting a lot.
Better Luck Tomorrow, though, is a very good movie.
I need to watch
I haven't
that.
seen it since I was in high school.
I have
but,
not seen it.
MTV
the script,
films.
So this script is available in PDF form. You can read it. It's dated to like April 21st, 2005. I skipped around to the end. Spoiler ahead for discussions of Oldboy for anyone who hasn't seen it. They have the incest twist in this script, and the movie ends with like the main guy going to see his daughter at her diner job, and the quote is, "He's torn by his decision, but knows he can't stay away." Then it ends with, "I shit you not, the zombies' time of the season." I guess because it asks, "What's her name? Who's your daddy?" I wonder if that was the motivation, but I was
kind of
I
brilliant.
just wrote my notes. Get the fuck out of here.
That's
I hate that
brilliant.
so much.
That is
awesome.
brilliant.
That's so good.
That I can imagine that being created in a movie, and everyone just thinking is the dumbest thing alive.
That's a needle drop to just like guarantee you an F cinema score for an ending.
Well, what I found so I mean, obviously Spike Lee has talked multiple times about Oldboy being a compromise film. I think what's really important to know about Oldboy is like you can tell in so many of the sequences, especially in like this very brief dialogue exchange between James Ransom and Josh Brolin when he's checking in on him, where like the ADR is so bad. And the editing is so choppy that you're like, oh,
Yeah.
they're just trying to speed this up and clearly trying to repurpose a scene for what it wasn't supposed to be used for.
Yeah, that was definitely the thing that hit me, where like he says like, "Don't hurt her," and like it's like I didn't even see Brandstone's face when he said that line.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the people mover shot. The people mover shot is like disrupted like 3 seconds in.
It's so weird where that pops up. It's like when he's just
Yeah.
going to like the blood bank, where that I was very surprised that that's the moment they chose to use that. But I do like the shot when he's on his drunken sort of bender, and like the camera's like sort of trained on like his shoulders from behind and everything. It's kind of like the rubber biscuit scene in Mean Streets when Harvey Keitel's like getting wasted in the bar, kind of like that. But it's yeah, I thought that was interesting. This is also the only collaboration I believe that that Spike Lee has with Sean Bobbitt, who's best known I think for shooting a lot of Steve McQueen's movies.
Yes.
It's also
yeah.
very funny to me. I mean, I guess not funny, just interesting that this is the first time that he worked with Samuel L. Jackson since Jungle Fever. Like,
That's insane.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
I have
just
a
bonkers. Like,
I have a quote on this. So Lee says this is an interview with Vulture, and this is the weekend the movie comes out, November 27th, 2013. He says that Jackson called him up and said, "I want to be in this film, and when you cast Sam, you have to think about what his hair is going to be like." So I asked, have you ever had a mohawk before? He said, no. I said, you can wear one in the film if you want to. He said, let's do it. There's 2 different colors to show the passage of time. I love it. It's just as simple as that. Just like, yeah, why not? Why not do this?
I do love his look in this movie where it's just like, hey, can you just look like an anime villain? Can you do that? Can you do that,
He's
Samuel?
really fun in this.
Yeah, he's fun in this.
Yeah,
I
and
love Samuel
hey,
Jackson.
listen, that scene of him getting the pieces of his neck cut. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's
That is pretty.
No Jackson cursing in that scene. Calls Brolin and no dick ass licking son of a bitch.
I hope that was in the script. Let me get through some of the trivia that we have not knocked out here. Elizabeth Olsen did not know the ending of the film until she watched it for the first time at the New York City premiere. Quote, I've never been more shocked and surprised by ending since maybe like The Sixth Sense. No one spoiled it for me, nobody hinted at me, and I got to experience it with just a blank canvas. Okay.
Is this for the original or the movie that we are about to talk about?
That would be funny if she was like, holy shit, I found out the twist as we were making
Well, I
the
mean,
movie.
there's that famous story where, Han Solo looked back at Mark Hamill during Empire Strikes Back during Luke, I Am Your Father, and goes, hey, kid, you didn't tell me that. So, like, I'm not saying it's never happened, but...
That's true. Josh Brolin personally created the title artwork, and I assume that's the cursive shown on the poster and not the title card for the actual film.
Yeah. He did a bunch of that shit on Doom Part 2 as well.
Oh, really? Wow.
Oh.
Yeah. He's got like a book of his art in journals that he did during the production.
Huh. That's interesting.
There's also controversy about someone tried to got in touch with like Spike Lee, like it was like a graphic designer who like got mad at him for like and accused Lee of like stealing his poster artwork for the movie. I'll drop it in the chat. Like there's like
That is pretty, yeah, you would have a case there, folks.
Looks basically exactly the same, except in the original designer's poster, it's like, Brolin's partway out at the coffin, you only see his legs, and there's a woman who's vaguely in the background and everything. And then, like, in the new poster, it's like, you can see his face coming out of the coffin or the chest, and, like, there's a woman that's a little bit closer in the foreground. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's like insert Vanilla Ice talking about the difference between Ice Ice Baby and Under Pressure.
Oh, yeah.
Or I don't know.
It's like someone copying your homework.
Basically. Also, Josh Brolin rocking Bryden's haircut in this poster. You notice that? He got the same haircut.
It does make him look scarier, like much more intense when he comes out and just like attacks those guys.
It absolutely does.
Someone
has to Photoshop. Wait, someone please Photoshop Bryden into the whole poster. That would be so
also,
good.
Josh Brolin, he's already there.
He's got like a big, handsome head.
Big head.
You shave that all back. The guy looks intense.
He does, yeah.
In part of your trivia, Kevin, did you make note that because I didn't know about this until very recently, that Brolin was sober since 2013 after being arrested for public intoxication on New Year's Day in 2013?
No, I did not. I did not know that.
Which does make the opening of this movie feel a little different in context. Even though it's mainly played for laughs and he's playing someone who's truly vile and screaming some terrible things, even though some of them are kind of darkly funny, it is kind of like, now I'm thinking back and I'm like, was Spike Lee just like, hey, can we just attach a camera to you, buddy? And then that happened. Like, yeah, it's just.
I believe he said, like Lee said that in like the hotel scenes, like, you know, not only is he like trying to think about like how do you make this look interesting, like when you're just in one location, which I think he succeeds at, but also I think like he said, like he was like just sort of setting Brolin loose and letting him improvise and stuff. And I do think Brolin's really good in those drunk scenes, not just like when he's belligerent, but also like when he first like stumbles out of bed in the hotel and he's just like saying like, all right, I'm gonna take a piss. He just sort of like, he's like as if like playing it as if like he's like, all right, I guess I'm in this situation where I've I slept with someone while I was on a bender. All right, I guess I'm used to this already. And he's like, oh, sorry, when he flushes the toilet. Like it's like the absent-mindedness and everything where he's just sort of like resigned to his fate. He's just like, it's like, yeah, I've been here before. But the character, I should say. But yeah.
No, Jeff Brolin personally has been there before. Yeah, like
I don't want to make.
He's been locked up for the extended periods of time. So yeah.
He got locked up after Hollow Man came out, and this was his first film. Yes.
I mean, that is like the weird thing of like how like, I mean, you didn't mention he was in Goonies as a teenager and age, but like there is like that weird like 20-year stretch where it's like, what's he doing? Like he's just kind of a guy in a lot of movies. Like, and some of them are good, but then there are movies like Into the Blue where it's just like, what does that have like any legacy outside of like I guess the poster with Jessica Alba?
No,
and Paul Walker.
They're in the blue. Gotta
Right.
get in it. Let me run down these real quick.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll chime in with my trivia after you go through yours because I did a lot here.
Yeah, I also interrupted. Sorry about that, bud.
Yeah, I'm putting you all in timeout now. Director Spike Lee said the version of his film was 140 minutes long, but the studio heavily edited it down to 104 minutes, cutting out 30 minutes. Lee disowned the film as a result. That's why it is a Spike Lee film and not a Spike Lee joint. But Sam was telling us that he also said that Josh Brolin said it was 3 hours long, and that Spike Lee said no, it's actually not 3 hours long. So it was longer, his director's cut.
Yeah.
In an interview given on November 2014, Josh Brolin expressed his dissatisfaction with the final result of the movie, especially when compared to the 2003 original Korean version. The hallway fight scene was done in one take, but it was edited for the final cut. And what the fuck? I mean, he does go through 2 floors in one cut, so I will give them that. But
it does, like, when it stopped, when he first like climbs down the floor, like it does sort of look like that looks like they hit a cut in there and everything, like
Right.
to sort of like stitch it together. And he said he originally wanted to shoot the fight scene on this is from Slash Film. He said he wanted to shoot it on a spiral staircase. But like they just didn't have enough money, so like he just like had to like find like differently. He said we had to find a location that had different levels. And it took and he says it took 5 weeks of prep and about 7 long takes.
damn.
The spiral staircase would have been cool. I mean, I like the fight scene, but like it's like just
Can I interrupt something real quick about the fight scene?
Yeah.
I was like, because my roommate has not seen this version, but wanted to see what the fight scene looked like. And then he was like, well, since it's in America, wouldn't they just shoot him?
Why does everybody pick up a 2x4?
And I was just like, you know what? It's still well choreographed, all right? Like,
yeah, and it's interesting. Lee makes Simon Abrams did an interview with Spike Lee, I think, in he talked about like Simon Abrams in his Esquire interview talked about how like there's like the scene when like Brolin comes out and like there's like they're coming out of the gun stores. That's like guns don't kill people, people do, or something like that.
yeah,
and
I
then,
noticed that. Yep.
Yeah, and then Jennifer Vineyard's The Vulture interview, Lee says like America's a more violent country, but there are no guns in the film, and there are many different levels of violence too, not just physical. I will dispute his point that there are no guns in the film. There are very pointedly some very graphic scenes involving gun violence in this movie. So kind of weird, but I guess he's more talking about like in the action scenes rather than like the horrifying scenes of like massacres and like suicide. So yeah.
Elizabeth Olsen's character has a octopus tattoo on her right arm, and nod to the infamous octopus scene in the original film. Joe also looks at a
tank.
Yes, that as well. Will Smith and Daniel Craig were offered the lead role but turned it down. Spike Lee's brother Sinclair played the bellhop pictured on the wall in the prison room and appeared as an hallucination. This may be an in-joke to Jim Jarmusch's film Mystery Train, where he has also played a bellhop. And we talked about Steven Spielberg's originally attached to direct, and Justin Lin. This was the penultimate film from Film District and was the last film they released theatrically. Pompeii was their last film, but Sony put that out. If it was...
Hello? Hey, tell me why I'm in here. Look at me. No.
He showed up last night.
I need your help, Chucky.
I haven't seen the guy in like 20 years.
Who are you?
If you were trying to find your daughter and clear your name, I could help you.
If you would like to see your daughter alive again, answer 2 questions. 1, why did I imprison you for 20 years? And 2, why did I let you go?
I only run this place, all right? You might want to think about what you're doing here.
I've been thinking about it for the last 20 years.
That's exactly why I think Spike Lee is a good fit for the material, and the fact that we'll never see is kind of a big shame, because the way I see Spike Lee is like, of course, when he's talking about the movie, he's not talking about an adaptation of the manga. He's talking about a reinterpretation of the movie itself, of Park Chan-wook's film. Which to me is him saying like, I see a lot of the truth in there, but like let me apply what I've learned and what I know about life, and especially American reality and exceptionalism. The stuff that rings truest to me in Spike Lee's reinterpretation of it is the way in which the villain is revealed to be just this emotionally hobbled rich boy. And how Joe Doucette was an emotionally hobbled rich boy. But obviously he decided to piss off the wrong one.
And it's a shame that the Brolin and Copley, who we haven't even started talking about yet, are just in two completely different movies. But yeah,
Yeah, and it's interesting too that we're talking about this. How like Lee is like he's critical of what happened to his movie, but it's like I mean, I was sort of surprised. I was surprised that I was able to find like interview quotes like with him talking about the movie and like why he was interested in the material. Because like, I think like when you think about like maligned movies by like auteurs and everything, there are certain directors who like don't like they don't talk about those movies like they exist. I mean, like people talking about I think like in William Friedkin's biography, he like there's no mention of like Duel of the Century or like The Guardian and stuff like that. But like here, like Lee talks about like it's interesting. Like there's like certain editing rhythms in this movie and like shot choices, like the sort of the signature dolly shot and everything, where like where like oh yeah, that's definitely Spike Lee and everything. But I was also trying to think about like thematically how it fits in, and he talks about it most in like and in this Esquire interview with Simon Abrams talking about like the atonement sort of angle of it and everything, and like the religious elements too. Like you see like across on like the bed above the bedboard in his hotel room and everything. Abrams says in a lot of your films, religion is represented by troubled men of faith like Ossie Davidson, Jungle Fever, or Clark Peters in Red Hook Summer. These men are defined by their hangups, their insecurities. And then Lee says, as my films has become more evident to me, is that many are about the choices people make and the reverberations of those choices. You go this way or that way, and either way, there's going to be consequences, which I think is really interesting. And it sort of hit on me too, like Joe Spate in this movie, where he condemns himself to hell for what he's done. Basically, is like something that like hit on me is like similar to like some of his other movies. When I watched Red Hook Summer as research for this, one of the Letterboxd reviews I read was by this writer Matt Bouget, who talked about like how the Clark Peters Spate in that movie, where he sort of lets himself be attacked for what he's done in the past and what's unveiled and everything, is similar to like Edward Norton rejecting the ice pack that's given to him after he asked to be beaten up by Barry Pepper and everything, like letting his wounds fester and everything. It is interesting how like these guys, like movies about like Oldboy sort of fitting in with those movies about like that men who have done bad things and letting themselves like sort of be punished like through violence, like for as like sort of dealing with it. I don't know. It's interesting to think about, like to sort of like see like the traces of like his interests like in this movie, and like hearing him talk about why he was interested in this movie. And by the way, also the script was sent to Lee because it's written by, as we said, like the guy who wrote like the Stellan Poseidon remake. But Josh Brolin, I think, was the one who like went to Park Chan-wook and asked like for his like sort of blessing to make the movie, which I think is really interesting. And I think Park, like the thing that was quoted in a lot of the interviews, just like Park saying like, don't like just remake my movie, like make it your own. And I think there's some interesting distinctions or some interesting differences that are made here. There's a lot to talk about with this. Clearly, it's interesting.
I mean, we've already been going for like 40 minutes, and we haven't even gotten to first impressions yet.
Oh, we're getting to it right now. Initial thoughts. Sam is our guest, and as a lover of Oldboy, and that's why you are here, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the original and the remake.
All right, that's fair. My relationship with the original actually started right before Spike Lee was announced to make the remake. It was just one of those movies where like Spike Lee is the person I know, not Park Chan-wook, when I was like a senior in high school, freshman in college. So I was like, all right, cool. I'll watch the original before the remake and everything. I was like, okay, yeah, this is an incredible film that is a very clear aesthetic product of its creator. And I'm sure you appreciate it, Kevin, more than anything, because it's a down and dirty genre film. At the end of the day, it's less a manga movie and more, a gritty realization of the source. And then Spike Lee's Oldboy, I felt at the time when I originally saw it, and I still feel to a certain extent, because again, it is a compromised movie, that it is taking it even further. Which is saying let's stop pussyfooting around the issue that all of these like terrible people doing terrible things aren't going to come to even uglier consequences, and that's what I felt in the movie. I mean, like from the get-go, it's a Spike Lee movie because it's like, okay, we're not going to have anyone likable. We're going to shove you right into the action. He's going to be supremely unlikable. Everything about him is going to be anti-heroic, or not even anti-heroic. So everything that happens to him in his story, I just felt was even more solidified by Spike's talent for injecting things with this white hot anger that's always directed in the right places. Like what Brendan was saying about atonement, it's like you can feel it throughout the movie. He feels like he's got to repent and atone for something, when in reality, what he's talking about is, the people in the story. If they were in America, they wouldn't have to repent or atone for anything.
When it comes to Oldboy, let me see, I'm going to share this in the chat. When I watched the original in middle school, very much loved it. I got this, which was a 10 3-disc DVD set back in the day, put out by Tartan Asian Extreme, which came with the manga. Ooh. And I remember having that back in the day. Remember loving it. I was even in fucking middle school, loved me some depressing ass, dark ass movies. So I had rewatched it probably 10, maybe even 15 years ago, probably 10 years ago. And then just a few days ago, rewatched it for the first time in 10 years. And I didn't love it as much. I still liked it. I think the thing that really that really poked me out about how goofy it is the antagonist is just over the toply. His plan is ridiculous. like spoilers obviously, but it's just you fucking told everybody I fucked my sister, so you know what I'm gonna do to get back to you? I'm gonna make you fuck your daughter. And it's just nobody wins. And
it's also they add the extra ridiculous layer in the Spike Lee movie where it's not only that, I also made a fake TV show that only you watched just to fool you even more. He's just hemorrhaging billions of dollars, probably just doing all of this. And I guess it's that white privilege run amok in America and everything, but it's just goodness.
I just want to interject real quick, and I'm not even going to give my opinion of the movie as a whole, but there was one point, because he brought it up, Bryden, where I was like, why does this news station look so shitty? Why does this look so fake? And then I actually thought the payoff of all that was very intentionally funny. So
yeah,
because it looks like shit. I mean, it looks like it was made for $5.
Yeah. But rewatching the original, and I was just yeah, this is still good as a movie, but I'm not emotionally invested in any of this because it's just cuckoo bananas. And I
think it keeps you at arm's length.
Yeah, and I kind of felt the same way. I watched Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, which a good movie. I do like it, but also I just felt kind of couldn't really get pulled in emotionally. But I was just man, this is pretty fucked up. But I've had that a few times with Park Chan-wook. Not really a fan of Stoker or Thirst or Lady Vengeance, but then Handmaiden I fucking love. So it's kind of all over the place. But I'm not surprised when I'm not all the way in the tank for one of his movies. But yeah, and then watching the remake, I did not like it, and I don't really like it. It was interesting watching it where I was I didn't know until I think I was doing the outline, and then one of the trivia facts had kind of the ending spoilers, and I was just oh well, it's a remake, I'll read that. But then it didn't spoil all of it. So then because I was just okay, what did they keep? Because I always thought in my head that it was they remade it and they just Americanized the ending and there's no incest. But then I found out that there was while doing the outline, and I was okay, but it didn't show me if Josh Brolin is fucking his daughter. So then while it's showing quote unquote his daughter on TV and then Elizabeth Olsen, I was just well, how are they going to do this? And I was is the TV show fake halfway through? I was is that it? And then he shows the set, and I was just well, that's just that's the bunch of shit dickery right there. I don't know what's going on anymore. But no, did not have a good time with this, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, or its reputation says. Even for people who do like it more than me, I don't think it's like the affront to God. Like, even if you're a massive fan, at the worst, it is just like what you would expect more times than not. Now, it does. You could say that the ending is much more nihilistic than the original. The original is not a happy ending. I mean, it's kooky where you're just like, who's hypnotized, who's not, who I don't know, but it is definitely much more like cut and dry. Like, nah, shit's fucked. Bye.
It's kind of, it made me think of I mean, this is a movie that was based on a book, of course, but like the ending of Shutter Island, where it's the question of like, which is worse, to live as a monster or die as a good man? It kind of feels like posing that same question, where it's like, I mean, in the original, it's like, in the Park film, it's like, do I, just sort of condemn, do I just like, live alone, or like, do I like live a lie and everything? And then like Brolin's like, I can't do that. He's like, I need to like die. Like, this is terrible. Like what's happened. Yeah. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing, because like I feel like if they would have nailed the villain in this to me, I probably would have liked it more. But because the antagonist in Oldboy is like kooky as some of his things is, he's terrifying. I don't want to fuck with him at all. This guy, I'm just like, get out of here, you nerd! Like, get out of here.
I mean, would have been probably a better villain, Samuel L. Jackson.
That would have been nuts.
I mean, it would have been weird too. Also, it's like, wait, Samuel Jackson and Josh Brolin went to high school together. How'd that work? But
it's fine. Well, fucking in Oldboy, the original, in the Oldboy original, the antagonist is 20 years younger, and they're just like,
right,
who cares?
Also, it's weird too. The movie opens in 1993, like explicitly, and then when they look into like the records of like the high school they went to, it's like, it cost in 1986. I'm like, wow. Brolin had a rough 7 years after he graduated high school, like from a completely different actor.
He was drinking like a maniac. I mean,
true,
few things age you more than
it's
booze.
Like him and like young Brolin and young Imperioli. I don't know the actors who played him. I think it's like Gray David who plays young Brolin, but I don't know who played young Imperioli. But it's like they flash forward. It's like, wow, you went from like a 17-year-old to Michael Imperioli now. Like, it's like that one. Not to speak ill of Michael Imperioli, who looks great for his age and everything, but it's like that's a rapid progression. Like it's
just the antagonist in this. I'm just like, this is just, get him out of here. This is fucking nerd. Like in the original, it's whatever. It's a dumb plan in the original. It's dumb, but I mean, revenge is dumb, etc., etc. But I feel like
I think it's cool. I don't know what you're talking about.
It's kind of cool. But in the original, maybe this is, it could be just what was fussed with the edit and whatnot, but I don't feel any of the antagonists as like story other than what we get to know. Because like even in the original, it's not like the antagonist is talking all the time, but you get way more time with him and him killing off the main character's friend and learning more about him and his insecurities, and also how rich he is to cover up everything, and like don't get that here. But also it's with an actor that I think is like so fucking annoying. But like, and the actor who plays the antagonist in the original is like so hot and also so fucked up at the same time, and there's just so much to get on with that one as far as that dynamic. So
with that original villain, you're like, no, you're so sexy. Ha, ha,
You're so sexy. Don't fuck your sister. Okay, Charlie, initial thoughts.
Oh boy. So I'll start off by saying, in terms of the original, I remember I watched the original when I was in high school back in the mid-aughts, and I remember hearing about it while watching one of the Bravo segments of Even Scarier Movie Moments, which it's an odd thing to throw this movie on there because it's not a horror movie, although it has moments that are horrific.
And
I
was
didn't
the
have
moment?
The twist spoiled for me, but I watched the clip at, spoiler alert for the original, where he cuts his tongue out at the end.
Okay,
like,
I mean,
oh shit, like, oh, I didn't know what the twist was because we were kind of talking over it. But I was like, oh shit. And then I also got Netflix for like the DVD subscription for my birthday when I was 16. And I remember being really excited about being able to, get hard to access films, especially, Japanese and, South Korean and Asian horror films sent to the house, because I was, really into that shit, especially as a teenager. And I remember, just the original like nuked me as a teenager, and like to the point that I was like, holy shit, and even made the mistake of showing my younger sister, who was maybe 12 at the time, because she was like also into horror movies, and I was like, I'm gonna be the cool older brother who shows her Old
No,
Boy.
you're
And then
not.
she was like, that really fucked me up. And she even told me that she took a film class later and saw it was on the syllable and was the one person in class who raised her hand and was like, is this the fucking movie with X, Y, and Z? Like,
It was,
yeah. She's like,
what the hell?
Jesus. Yeah.
All the 12-year-olds are up in arms.
Yep. So, and I've seen it a handful of times. I still love the original. I mean, very basic take, but it's my favorite. Park Chan-wook. When you say that his films keep you at an emotional distance, I don't disagree with that a lot of the time. I mean,
I said
think
some of them. Like Handmaiden, I'm much more into those characters, but like sometimes I'm just like I'm not pulled in, you know.
I actually find Oldboy to be his most moving, which I don't know what that says. It's also the one I've seen the most too, though. And I mean, I you know, I've only seen Decision to Leave once, but the ending has haunted me since, and I'm sure it will like hit me even harder second time around. Anyway, I like Park Chan-wook. I like, you know, I love Oldboy, the original. I love Handmaiden. You know, I'm a fan of Lady Vengeance, Decision to Leave, Thirst. I also love Spike Lee. I mean, Do the Right Thing is, you know, I'm scolding hot take, but Do the Right Thing, like arguably, like I don't have a top 10 of all time, but if I had to make one, it would be in there. I mean, Malcolm X is a goddamn masterpiece. 25th Hour, I love. I also love Spike Lee movies that are messy. I am on record for thinking, you know, Jungle Fever is like top tier, and there are.
I like that movie too.
I love Jungle Fever, and Jungle Fever is not a perfect movie. It is a very messy movie, but I love how alive and messy that movie is. So obviously, you know, I don't know why it took me so long to see the remake of Oldboy, because you know, I loved Spike Lee when it came out. You know, had seen plenty of his movies then, loved the original, and was like always curious about it, and just never got around to it. And so I was actually really, out of all the movies that we were covering for this Film District miniseries, I'd say this is like definitely one of my most anticipated. And I'm not dislike the Spike Lee movie apart from The Sweet Blood of Jesus, which is also a remake. And it's not even a film I hate. It's just something that I found. I also haven't seen Gone Van Hess, so that's also on me. And it's one that I probably will revisit once I've seen Gone Van Hess. The Oldboy, I guess one other thing. I love messy, wounded duck, messy films that are compromised. I have are sometimes some of my favorite films to stand up for. I mean, anyone who knows me knows that Kenneth Lonergan's Margaret is one of my favorite movies. I mean, the extended cut is obviously the preferable cut, but even the theatrical cut I think is a masterpiece. Even in its truncated form. I mean, Sam and I are both big fans of Jonathan Demme's Swing Shift, which the director's cut of that movie, oh my God, one of his best works. So it brings me no joy to say, I thought this was okay. Like, I wanted to stand up for this movie like Sam does, and I know Sam has loved it ever since we've been friends. It just felt awkward and disjointed, and I just, you know, it's the type of the original is that type of movie where I feel like the momentum of this story is getting to the ending and then being kind of bowled over by the twist and thinking back upon it. And so when you know what's coming and you're seeing it remade, you're still waiting for the big reveal because it's all building up to a big reveal. And what Spike Lee does with this is slightly different, but not so much so that it's
still fucked up.
It's still fucked up, but it's not like, and it's not doing anything that different either thematically. It's also for Spike Lee, who is just such an audacious, formally incredible film. He makes such bold choices. There's not a lot of playfulness here in these shots, and maybe that was all left on the cutting room floor. Maybe, you know, the studio compromised him to play it a little more safe, but I feel like there's just not a lot of his personality in what this edited form of the movie is. I mean, even like, because I mean, bringing up Jungle Fever, I know some people who are like, I think Jungle Fever is great, except for that ending, which is one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, you know, Jungle Fever, that last shot,
it's fucking
that
nuts.
is one of the most daring, like, it's insane.
I love that.
There's nothing like,
it's insane.
It's absolutely insane. And it just kind of like every time throughout this movie, I was like, well, let's see how this turns out, and kind of kept waiting for him to make those big gonzo, I don't give a fuck decisions. And it just kind of played out like the same movie I've seen before, clearly compromised by, you know, a bunch of, you know, unfortunate, you know, studio mandates and what have you. And I just kind of was like, it's not terrible. It's Brolin's very good. I mean,
Go ahead.
yes. Charlton Copley is just insufferable in this movie. I'm sorry. I know. And look, I get it. I know he's playing a character named Price and he's doing a Vincent Price type of thing. I get it. Maybe with a different actor, but with Charlton Copley, it's just terrible. And like Kevin said, I mean, you get the villain at the end of the first one is ultimately the first one is about characters who are wounded by being attracted to people and the shame that they feel to it. And there's a dark heart at the core of the first one that is revenge over deep shame. And maybe this is just, I don't know, maybe I'm bringing my own queerness and being in the closet viewpoints here, but like there's something about the first film that is like as goofy and silly and ridiculous as as it is. There is like something that's very tragic, even at the center of that whole shame thing. Here, I mean, are we allowed to get into spoilers yet? Because
we've already spoiled shit.
I spoiled the movie
here
ago.
It's like the twist is that dad was a pedophile and he fucked the whole family, and that's why I'm angry. And plus, Charlton Copley is just doing the most obnoxious, over the top performance. Where I'm like, there's nothing even here thematically because. At the beginning, when it gets down to it, at the first one, it was like, I really love my sister and you made her kill herself and feel ashamed of herself. This one is dad was a sexual predator who raped my entire family, but I still loved him. And then
he's a kid when it happens. I'm not like saying it's right for him to think that, but like it's like a warped sense of like family loyalty. And then he repeats it again, which is like an unfortunate like.
But the film isn't even interested in that from a psychological standpoint, and even in this cartoon, it just feels kind of dumb. I don't know. Like, and on top of that, I don't know if I was supposed to be laughing, but I was. Because it's almost played for laughs, right? That one take of like father where she undresses herself.
Oh,
and
I find that
shot.
So horrifying. It's
but then
so
he
creepy.
goes father and starts unbuckling his pants. I'm like, I think this is supposed to be funny, and that's okay. I'm not offended by that, but like,
no, I think it's like very dumb, very pervy and gross. Like that's the point of it. Is like especially with. No, well, I think Spike is also telling the flashbacks through Price's point of view. Like that's the whole thing too.
Well, no, it's not. It's through the father's point of view during that massacre. It's a take of him just going through with the.
There was kind of like
rifle.
mindset. Like it's not Joe. Like Joe's not remembering anything in that scene.
Well, because after they both shoot each other, it turns to Brolin and bad guy make bad guy, like watching it happen, because that's how the flashbacks are.
It's something that they do in the Park film too, where it's like the older men are like going through like their teen years, like literally walking through those same spaces.
And on top of that too, there's just no like it. Even in the first one, as ridiculous as the hypnosis stuff is, at least it makes sense why his daughter would be following this guy around because she's been hypnotized. There is no reason for Elizabeth Olsen to suddenly be like,
she's a nurse, Charlie.
And she's dealt with addiction before, they refer to.
Yeah. Like, and not like I give a shit about realism in this type of stuff. I just don't think it's doing anything that interesting or different or even that like and again, I thought, Spike Lee has made movies where like just the most bonkers shit has happened that I just kind of felt like he was really restrained here and not in a way that felt genuine. Like it just kind of, I don't know, we're just going through the motions here. It's not terrible. It's just sort of there as a curio and
and him not going out, we don't know if that was him restricting or if it was the studio cutting it. So it's just like, well, I don't know, man. Yeah.
I also wanted to ask too, because Charlie, Kevin, and I, we're all catching up with this movie at home like 10 plus years after it came out. Sam, did you see this in theaters? I can't remember if you said that.
Yeah, I saw it in theaters opening night.
Wow. What was it? Do you remember like what the sort of temperature of the audience was like? Like, could you get a sense of people revolting against the movie as it was playing out in front of you?
No, there was like three other people in the theater and everyone was silent.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense, actually. Yeah. When you're talking about, I mean, Thomas said this movie made thousands in its opening weekend, so millions. So
And
there you go.
this was at the AMC Boston Common, which is in the heart of downtown Boston. So it's if it's a Friday night, your movie's opening and there's 7 o'clock showing or the 9 o'clock showing, you got 3 fucking people in there. It's not looking good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
The other people going in are like, what is this movie called? And you hear the person with them go, who cares? And just sit down.
Well, I did see a trailer for this movie in front of Escape Plan when it came out, or when it was coming out. Yeah.
Well, I remember right after the movie, I met up with a friend and she had asked me, like, hey, explain the movie you just saw. Like, was it good or anything? And I was like, I don't know if you want me to talk about this.
Yeah.
But at Brighton, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is your first time seeing both of them, so I'm very curious on your takes.
So I watched the Park movie like last month, I think, when we were getting ready to do this. I've also been watching a lot of Spike Lee movies, not gonna lie, I've watched 4. But I've seen like a bunch of his movies leading up to that. I think the Park Oldboy is fine. It kind of like, maybe it was like a case of it having like been built up over years. I knew the twist going in because it was like one of those movies that you see like go on the list of like Aaron Tim Weekly names the best twist ending to movies, and it was like Fight Club and Identity and this and like a bunch of other things.
It is a fucking fantastic twist because I mean it is done right, like where it's not, you can't guess that like at all.
Right. Yeah, but it's interesting. I sort of felt like at an arm's distance from it too. I think because there is like kind of in like the goofiness is maybe not the right word, but it is like kind of a glib movie. Like a lot of it where like, where like playing like a lot of like the stuff for like dark jokes and everything where like, there's like the scene in the Park film where like he's like telling the suicidal guy about his story, and then the guy's supposed to tell him about his stuff, and then like he just kills himself in the next shot. It's like a background gag.
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, okay, that's like clever, I guess, but also it's like kind of makes me like a little hard for me to invest in it, and like especially like there is like a bit of a sort of an edginess sort of that like the movie seems to be like projecting with like the reveal and everything, with like the grinning villain and like them playing the sex tape like at max volume as like, and I'm
that's
like,
what
okay.
I mean there is goofiness in it, but I'm talking about like it's more so just like ridiculous. Like this is all just
yeah. I find that like, and it's sort of like. But also, like, yeah, some of the glibness we're dealing with, some of the like the upsetting stuff that happens in the movie, like, kind of puts me off. Not so, but and also,
and then we open with Josh Brolin's character, and you're like, now this guy I can relate to.
Well, they do sand off a lot of edges from the original guy. The original guy is like really fucked up.
Well, yeah, there's no like he doesn't try to rape his daughter when he first meets her and anything, which is the thing that they take out. I mean, like Brolin like it's like does like grab Olsen and anything, but doesn't like it's Where was I going with this? I was like, Choi Min-sik, incredible in the original. Like, the feral energy that he brings to that character in just about every scene. It's like, he really like hits the emotion. If anything, like has an emotional impact in that movie, like with his character, it's like because of him, I think. Like the way he just like flings himself around the room when he finds out like this terrible stuff. I think Brolin goes from broke too, like when he's like balling up his fist and like just screaming in agony. I think like he's also got like a really interesting physical performance in the Lee film. My other thing too is Lee talked about this too, how like the hypnosis angle is in the graphic novel and the Park film. I feel like that kind of like, I guess it is like the point of like the revenge is like, taking away the agency of these characters and everything. But it also, I think maybe like, it kind of makes like, I don't know, maybe I just sort of, it maybe sort of saps some of the emotional impact for me because it's not so much, I mean, yeah, you talked about Sam about like sort of it is like really confronting sort of the choices that these characters make, like it is like sort of their natures, I guess, driving it. Like I feel like that's maybe a little bit more honest, I guess, is maybe the word I'm looking for in like the Lee film.
Well, yeah, I feel like it's all wrapped up in Lee's perception of American society in general, especially for white people.
Yes,
and like that's part of what draws me so much to it, is because like here's this white hot anger looking for a fucking socket, and here's this really violent, outlandish, ridiculous genre movie in which he can apply that, but of course it's still compromised. There's still so much cut out of it. All the movements that you can feel in the movie that you're like, oh man, this is like building, it is gonna like pay off very well. They're very, very harshly edited.
Yeah, and I will say the thing that keeps me going, it keeps me positive on the Park film is like the direction. Like, I mean, like I said, the glibness is kind of the thing that puts me off, but also like there's like things are like this is just like thrilling. Like I like kind of like the trip hop elements of the score and everything, and like
The hallway scene is still like the best shit
it's a
ever.
really good,
It's
really
incredible.
good fight scene, and like the scene transitions to like with like where like the characters like just like find themselves like literally walking through their past. Like all that's really striking. He does that in his later movies too. It's really cool. Just seamless.
Literally
Sorry, Charlie,
half the
go-
kids I went to Emerson with were like, I want to make a movie like that hallway scene.
Don't do that. You won't do it well. You won't do it
Literally,
well.
it was 2009 when I was in college, so everyone had the chance to see Oldboy on DVD at that point, and everyone was like, I want to make movies like Oldboy. Like, it was that, everybody loved this movie. It was everybody who ever loved this movie in high school who was too afraid to mention that they loved this movie to people in like their suburban homes all went to a liberal arts school and were like, hey, have you seen Oldboy? And then did we just become best friends? Like that type of thing.
Yeah. I think what was it, when I was going to college, because I graduated in 2015, but that's still the film program at my school, Fitchburg State University, was pretty well known in the state. So I remember asking a lot of film students, because I was not one of them. I didn't not want to associate with film students. I was a communications student who was smarter than the film students, and I reserved that right to this day.
As somebody who was a film major, I understand.
We were insufferable.
A lot of the film majors that I asked would be like, "What's your favorite movie? What kind of filmmaker do you aspire to be?" And I'm telling you, 8 out of 10 times, without fail,
Spielberg?
Interstellar and Christopher Nolan.
Oh yeah.
Or no matter what your response would be, that person would most likely respond with, "Oh, you like those kind of movies." Like it was that type of condescending.
It was like I was a film major and I was not pretentious about it, but then like everybody was just like, I remember one class, like one student who must have been like 19 or 20 was trying to like argue with my professor who's been teaching film for like 30 years. I was like, will you sit your ass down and shut up? Like, please, like, you know what the fuck you're talking about, dog.
Yeah, like this isn't like the Dead Poet Society. Like nothing's gonna be gained by like people shouting at each other.
One thing I will say, one of the best classes I ever took at Emerson when I went there, and one of the best professors I ever had was Shujin Wang, who taught a transnational agent cinema class. And I remember we asked, what is your hot take with movies? And she was like, I don't like Park Chan-wook. And everyone in the class was like, huh? And then she was like, Oldboy sucks, I'm sorry. And we were like, what? No, and we were just like, we have to move on anyway.
They're like, no, that's the class today. Yeah. That's the class.
And you know what? But then she showed us like so much. Oh God, she was the best teacher. She knew her shit. She introduced me to Wong Kar-wai films. She showed us Takashi Miike movies. We watched Perfect Blue and Audition in class. It was, oh God, I loved that. Shout out to Shujin Wang. I hope you're still teaching that class.
I hope you're still hating Park Chan-wook. Lead that fight. Lead that.
I will say, my favorite Park Chan-wook movie I've seen so far is Joint Security Area, which I feel like I buy into that movie.
I've not seen that. I want to watch that.
It's really good, and it's like very like sharply edited, like all of his movies. But I feel like that movie I kind of buy into more because like that really does spend time with the characters getting to know each other, because it's about people who like are taught to hate each other and then like end up like accidentally like they end up like spending time and being like, oh, we're actually like pretty good buddies, we should keep this going, and I'm like on the down low and everything. It's a really like, and that makes the ending of the movie so sad. But then like I buy, and I maybe don't buy quite as much into the emotional core of something like Oldboy. Decision to Leave leaves me a little bit cold, but I also find the direction in that movie so thrilling that it carries me through. And then Stoker is like one of the ones I like a lot too, because it's like, well, all these characters are sociopaths, so like it's like I'm fine with them, like, you know, not necessarily buying into them like emotionally or anything. It's like they're all just like evil and like fucking with each other. And that movie also has, I feel like that movie gets like the dark comedy balance with like the thriller elements and everything, where like, you know, bodies hidden in freezers while going to get ice cream, and, you know, people like holding knives on each other and everything, like when they're like cutting cakes. It's like, I find that movie quite entertaining. Sorry, Sam, you look like you were going to say something, and I wanted to.
It's like that incredible Clint Mansell score in Stoker as well. Like,
yeah.
That movie fires on so many different levels, but it's not that it wasn't warmly received when it came out. It hasn't really made that much of a lasting impression because you don't hear people talk about it that much. But I think like as an aesthetic exercise, watching someone like Park Chan Wook come to make his first Hollywood American film, it's insane.
Yeah, and like you can tell it's him too. Like it's like the scene transitions like all feel like something that you would see in one of his Korean films. I still need to see a lot. I would like to see more. He's definitely a talented director. I'm just like I'd like some of his movies to varying degrees more than others.
The Handmaiden, A+.
I need to see that. Yes, that's a huge gap in my cinephilia. No, I haven't. I hadn't seen one of his. Decision to Leave was the first one I saw, like when that came out, and then like I've been gradually catching up on them in piecemeal.
Sam and I saw The Handmaiden together, and I'm pretty sure that when the first sex scene started, 5 people sitting like a few rows in front of us just got up and left, and we were like, "What the fuck kind of movie did you think you were watching?"
I saw that in like a sold out theater in like Texas, and I was just like, oh.
That sounds
wow.
perfect.
Yeah. It's a great like indie. It was the Angelica in Texas, but it was awesome.
Yeah. Sam and I remember when we like, I don't know, 10 minutes into that movie, there's that erotic tooth scraping scene, and we kind of looked at each other like, oh boy, like we're in for it. Yeah. This is gonna be something.
It was like the Vince McMahon reaction gif of him going like,
Yes, I'm sorry. I feel like I've been like talking around the movie. It's I also really like Spike Lee. We're here to talk about him, of course, today. I think Clockers is probably my favorite that I've seen so far. I really like that one a lot. This one, I again, like it was kind of my morbid fascination with like sort of like blind, genre movie, not just some maligned movies by like acclaimed auteurs, but also like genre movies by auteurs. Where like I feel like Lee doesn't really do straight up genre movies most of the time. I think like Inside Man is like the best sort of like fusion of like his like interest like as a social commentator and also as like a genre filmmaker. Like I feel like that's like really interesting to see. And then there's The Sweet Blood of Jesus, which like comes after this. It's like that's like him reinterpreting Ganja and Hess, and like that's a much more languid movie and everything than you'd expect for a movie about vampires. But like it's and then like Black Klansman, that's like a crime procedural. So yeah, like he does it every now and then, but I feel like that's not quite his focus. And I feel like all those examples are probably better illustrations of him as a filmmaker, like personality wise, where like he will have. I mean, the thing I like about his movies is like they are kind of like rambling with like lots of digressions and like scenes that play out like in a very like for like minutes on end where like characters are like talking to each other. I mean, like especially like Jungle Fever, where I watched like where it's like sometimes like characters will just be like yelling at each other, and like I think in that movie they stop to say like, what are we even arguing about? Like it'll take like 5 minutes for them to like get to sort of like the point of like. And then you're like, oh shit, like there's the point of the movie, like they're in that argument, and it's like really interesting to like stumble to like for him to let his scenes play out like that. And then like like just sort of like weird bits of humor, and like even if like they don't always entirely work, like I mean it's questionable to like in Summer of Sam, like should he have the CGI talking dog with the voice of John Turturro?
Yes.
But like even if it doesn't entirely work, I'm like, I love that like you could probably give that movie to 10 different filmmakers, and I don't think like
none of them would
like,
do
go
that.
far.
not a single one.
It's awesome. But Oldboy, it's interesting how like I think as a genre movie, and like also it's interesting hearing like I think like Alex Dowd's B- review of the remake. I should read his full review because he's a wonderful writer, but it says it's good like as long as like you don't like think about like the original. It's like actually, I want to find the tagline because the headline because it's he phrases it in a way that I think is interesting to discuss about this movie and how it compares. Oldboy will feel old hat, but only to those who have seen the original. So I think maybe I like this Lee version a little bit more because I'm a little more ambivalent about the Park film. But like as a genre movie, I think this is like it's interesting how it's like it is one of his shorter movies, and it definitely is because like it was compromised. But like I was watching this thing like, wow, like this is moving through the plot like really economically and everything. Like I'm really caught up in this, and like the performers are like except for Copley, giving it their all. Like, and I found like I think as like a thriller, it's like pretty just like a straight up thriller. I think it's pretty well made. That's not what I go to a Spike Lee movie for. I go for like those digressions and like stylistic flourishes, and they aren't quite as present as they are in his other works. But I think like as like just sort of like imagining like an alternate universe for like Spike Lee is just like he's doing like journeyman genre projects on the side. It's like, I mean, he's good at it. Like, I think the fight scene is like really well staged and everything. Like the way that like, you know, when you think like it'll hit like the sort of lulls and you sort of similar to the park fight, where like, you know, you think it's over and then like it's suddenly like guys burst in from like, you know, the one side of the frame and everything and attack him. And I like sort of like when he throws people into like, you know, the wooden pillars and like, you know, like you just see sort of like dust rising. I think like it, and it's funny too to watch it. Like, you know, we get like a lot of stitched together one take fight scenes now, or one shot fight scenes now that like can sort of feel like a little tiresome. But like, I found this like pretty engaging to watch. And I like there are like little touches. I mean, you kind of have to like, or at least I was just sort of more latching onto him. I like some of like the villain details. I mean, like, you know, it's cool to see him cast like people who you'd work with like before and after. Like one of the ringleaders is I mean, Rami Malek is in this, so gets hammered to the head. He's in Disciple of Jesus after this.
10 seconds. I was like, hey, Rami Malek. And he's dead. Okay.
I was fine with it personally, but that's just me.
Yeah. And then one of the people in like Samuel L. Jackson's crew is Elvis Nolasco, who is on the ABC show American Crime. He's also one of the guys in Mekhi Phifer's crew in Clockers like 20 years ago. He's also had to Sweet Blood of Jesus. I think Jackson is, you know, very fun hamming it up in his few minutes of time. And it's interesting to sort of showing like, again, like the power structures like of like, you know, like rich white men run amok, and like the way that like, you know, Jackson, I mean, he's about to like do something really horrible to Elizabeth Olsen when like in like that one scene where he breaks into her house and everything, but then like the way that like he sort of is like, you know, protesting the Charlotte Copley on the other end of the phone, and then like Copley says something that we don't hear on the other end, and then he sort of reverts to like politeness, so like sort of like he's like, thank you for you know, this opportunity, and like, you know, being like very thankful towards like his boss and everything. It's like, oh, there is like something there about like the power structures of like, you know, Copley getting like throwing money at this black man to like get him to do his dirty business and everything. So that's interesting. And I liked the edits that like sort of, I mean, there will be sometimes these very jarring edits in Spike Lee movies where like when and you see it in this when Lance Reddick, again, we're talking about the cast of this movie, when he slaps Josh Brolin in the restaurant, it's like the two separate like really like close together cuts. I love that shit.
The great slap.
Yeah, and deserved too. Brolin is being a massive dick in that scene. I will say, also an interesting bit of like some of the stuff that's like a little less distinctive about Lee's movies, about this movie compared to Lee's work. He has often great use of music in his movies, whether it's like needle drops or like a score work. You know, Terrence Blanchard does like a lot of his scores. This was originally going to be scored by Bruce Hornsby, who does the score for Red Hook Summer and also To Sweet Blood of Jesus. And then it was going to be Michael Nyman, who did the score for Gattaca. And then they got Roque Banos, who's a Spanish composer who did work for like Fede Alvarez. Like I think he did the Evil Dead score. He also did work on the Sexy Beast score. Not a bad composer. I will say it's kind of like if we're talking about like how this does feel like just sort of like another genre movie, that's the element that really sticks out to me is like the least distinctive, where it's like the grinding sort of guitars and everything that play during the fight scene. I'm like, I feel like this could have been anyone putting this in a movie. But
it's a very good point. I mean, I mentioned I just watched Crooklyn, and like every fucking needle drop in that movie is magical. Like
all the Stevie Wonder songs in Jungle Fever.
That Stevie Wonder needle drop in Jungle Fever where he where Wesley Snipes goes to visit Sam Jackson with Halle Berry. That whole
Living for the City.
Yeah, Living for the City is just
like the best song ever.
Incredible. Ugh.
And then almost all of Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On" is in Defy Bloods.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Good. Yeah. Oh, I will say, Hornsby, you know, he ended up not doing the movie, but in the credits they do have credit. They do, I guess, the violin pieces that you see the actress of Mia playing, like that is his music. So that's how it made it into the movie, which is interesting just to see how something that gets reused. Yeah, I don't know. And other funny details, just like sometimes like the villains, like, you know, like a lot of it is like faceless goons, but I do love in the scene where when they get the drop on Josh Brolin and Michael Imperial in the bar. One of the guys holding the shotgun looks like he's like maybe 20 years old. He's only just like a college kid in like a hoodie. So I do love that detail. And I'm sorry if I'm maybe also drawing out my initial thoughts. I feel like it's very important to talk about the differences with the graphic novel, which I read about earlier today on blog posts.
Yes.
So in the graphic novel, from what I've gathered from these, there's I don't love this website name. The website is called Topless Robot. It's a Mike Toole article summing is surprising ways the original Oldboy manga differs from the Korean film. So in the graphic novel, he's kept in prison for 10 years, or instead of like the other amount of time. He has no wife and kid. He leaves behind his fiance who gets remarried when he's out. He gets like a construction job, I think they said, when he gets out of jail, rather than like immediately going out for revenge. The love interest, as we can call it, that's a bad phrase to use it. I mean, scratch that. But the woman who he meets, not his daughter. That's not in the graphic novel. It's a quote from this blog post. A pretty young bar hostess named Ari, and then it turns out that she's like been just hypnotized by the bad guy who's orchestrating this whole thing. And also with the bad guy's whole plan, it's not incest, and like it is in the films. It's they went to middle school together, and both of them were really smart. And the main guy decided to just sort of coast along so he could fit in. And then the villain was pissed that he didn't fulfill his full potential alongside him. He's like mad at him, like for that, basically. Like it's, and I'm just like, so like it's not. I'll say maybe not quite as interesting, although it is still funny that it all goes back to high school. Just like, I mean, like the line I thought of was from 21 Jump Street before Jonah Hill shoots Rob Riggle at the crotch. It's like, you peaked in high school, motherfucker. Also, no hammer fight, no teeth torture.
This manga sucks.
Yeah, and then there was, I think, one other thing. But yeah, it's just like weird to think about how like it is really different, and like these directors are like making it. And Park makes the film like really gross with the twist, and then like you were talking about like, oh, are they gonna like soften it for America? It's like the backstory is even grosser, like with like what the guy like went through in high school. It's like really, and like it's tragic too, because like he's a survivor of like horrible abuse and everything, but then like he does it to other people. It's just like, yeah,
it's dumber though. There's no heart at there's no heart at the core of the crime at the remake. Ultimately, the revenge at for the first one is done because of something truly like, the character is feeling just incredible loss and guilt and shame, and this one is just. It's like Charlton Copley twirling his mustache, and it has no weight to it. It's just silly.
But it's interesting how in the Park film, like I think I talked about this with Kevin before we hopped on the call, or before we started recording, how like it's interesting how in like the Park film, he is just like kind of a dumbass kid. He doesn't seem like actively malicious. He's just sort of like gossiping. And then like in the Spike Lee film, it's like he's mean to that girl like even before he finds out what happens and like what's going on with her and everything. And then like it shows like him and young Michael Imperioli like screaming like horrible slurs at her like in the hallway and everything. Like it is like kind of interesting, the two different sides of like adolescence, where it's like kind of like thoughtless cruelty and then like active cruelty, which is interesting to sort of see that. And then I would say it might be, yes, it's like kind of goofy, especially when you get the TV set reveal, like when you find out everything that's been happening. I will say, I think a large part of why this movie works so well for me is I think Brolin is like just like top level in this. Like I think he's really like, he sells like sort of like the ferocious anger of like those fight scenes where he is like, it's like, oh yeah, this guy would scare the shit out of me if I saw him like in the street and everything. Like when he attacks, I mean, when like one of the first things he does when he gets out of prison is he just like demolishes those like soccer players and everything, which is like just like
annihilates them.
Yeah, and I will say it's interesting how Lee shoots at violence, and he talked about how he doesn't want to like glorify violence in movies, and he says like violent video games are a problem, which is something that he addresses in Inside Man. But I do like, it's interesting, like you almost get, I don't know if like frame rate's quite the right word or anything, but it does almost seem to be like sped up a little bit more. Like it is kind of like more lurid looking when like he's like throwing punches at those guys in that scene, like the broad daylight. You don't have quite that same level in like the big like sort of hallway fight scene in like in the middle of the movie and everything. But it is interesting how like he does make those, how he does film those in like sort of a different filmic texture than like some of the other scenes in the movie.
I kind of figured that was because of just Joe training when he was locked up, just kind of very much like reacting to the stimuli.
Yeah.
Because think about, obviously someone being in captivity for that long, and going on to the real life, just being completely overwhelmed by the experience. But of course, like what did he do when he was in captivity? He only dreamt and trained for revenge. That's really like that. It's the urge that you're watching him resist and not resist at the same time in certain ways in the movie. where you can see him wanting to have a deeper connection with people. You can see Roland's performance, I think, is what sells it much more than the script itself. Because you can very much see how he gets frustrated at himself for being like, no, it's time to like turn it off for a second, because like you need to these people care about you.
Yeah, when he grabs like Elizabeth Olsen, she says, "Can you get your hands off of me?" And like the way his eyes just sort of like dart around, like as if like he's kind of like waking up from like this like just like the red mist and everything, and then like he just like and then like he curls up like in like a fetal position. Like it's like it is like there's like such a sense of like shame in the way that he carries himself physically throughout the movie, like in those scenes, and it's just so many like weird choices that he makes. Like when like I guess there's an explanation for it, like a minute later after it happens, but when like he goes to the former dean of like the school that he went to and everything, when he gets out of the car, he's like, I love how like he's like crouching down, and I'm like thinking, is he just gonna like enter every room like this, like where he's just gonna be like having to like sneak along, and then it's like
Solid
he's like
Snake
into
and
our
shit.
house to like steal files and everything. But I just love how it's like he does sort of carry that like sense of like sneakiness with him and everything, because like that's like sort of what was bred into him when like he was like playing to escape and everything, how he had to do everything on the down low. It's it's a really interesting performance.
Which is why I am like I see his performance, and I think everything Spike has talked about the movie, he's just like, it's a huge collaboration between Josh and I, figuring out the character, trying to make him interesting instead of just trying to capture what Park Chan-wook already did. I think Brolin's performance perfectly sells the fact that like the movie's supposed to be so much more complex and full throated in its anger that it gets clipped from, or in its current state, it's clipped. So it's depressing that way. But honestly, every time I revisit it, it just makes it even more apparent to me the film's strengths and how those would probably be better served by what was cut out of it.
I mean, I don't like this movie very much, but if the director's cut did become available, I would watch it in a heartbeat, just because I can see a version of this film that might work better, or I would want it to. I don't know. I mean, it almost seems too, and I know that it's based off of a graphic novel, as we've mentioned numerous times now. It just seems, I don't know, you get one of the greatest, the original is such a provocative international thriller. Spike Lee is just such a great, American provocateur, one of the great American filmmakers of our time. Does not hold back, does not pull punches, and it's just so, even for all the minor tweaks of the plot that we've discussed, it still feels too tied to the original source material to me in ways that, like, I don't know, just I wanted him to just go, and obviously he wasn't allowed to, as we talked about it, but if it was just fully unhinged, not just in terms of the plot, but aesthetically, I don't know.
I hear everything you're saying. I know what you mean. It is just funny still, like, to talk about this movie. It's like, oh man, it's like you think like Spike Lee doesn't pull punches, and we're talking about this movie, which has like just some of like the nastiest. It's just like the violence is so nasty.
But it's like here's one filmmaker at the height of their powers, and here's another filmmaker completely having his wings clipped. It's like, which version?
For sure.
And I just find
It's still nasty. It just doesn't feel like a Spike Lee movie.
it doesn't feel it's robbed of his personality.
Yeah, even something like Inside Man, which is like his most studio commercial movie, it feels like a Spike Lee movie.
So the one thing that really gets me with the remake, and I don't think this particular scene was like really cut to the point where it's not what Spike Lee had planned. But everything to do with the sex scene. I mean, the sex scene is very much classic Spike Lee of these people care for each other. It's very tender and erotic and ugly. Like it can be all of those things.
Right.
Yeah.
Even the sex scene to me, though, I mean, again, I think it's just adapting this story that is just all about having layers unrolled. And if you've seen the story play out before, for me, it just doesn't hold the same.
Yeah, because
weight.
that's what I like so much about this adaptation, because the reinterpretation of the heart of the story is we go from these very deeply personal realizations to, in this movie, being like, oh, yeah, here are the ways in which these people either don't have to deal with their consequences or do. And it's very like more doomed reality kind of version of it, like where it reflects negatively on everything around it rather than just those
Mhm.
characters.
Do you feel like the politics of this movie though? Like because Spike Lee is, obviously one of the most politically charged filmmakers in our in America today. Just like I get what you're saying about white rage and stuff like that, and there is certain things of like Josh Brolin being such a pig even in school, and him being so given all these opportunities as a white, as a white man and stuff like that. But like even here, it felt like the studio might have muted that. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that again, that's why I think what exists is a very compromised product or a very compromised movie. It's just it's it's a movie that it's not even like vaguing at something more. It's like it's something more. It's supposed to be something else.
Well, yeah, and like the news footage, like and like this to show the passage of time in like both films, like you're seeing like news footage on TV. In both films, they show 9/11, the 9/11 attacks, but then in Spike Lee's film, they show like Hurricane Katrina, and Bush, like as presidents, and like all these other things. It's like, and you're not like there's something there and everything, like in showing like those specific guys. Not only like is this coming like many years after like the Korean film, so like there's more has happened you can like gesture towards and everything, but it is like you're right in terms of like you maybe have to like search a little bit more to like think about like
And
what the connective tissue is.
and
Yeah.
Spike Lee is just such a great filmmaker when it comes to making you feel like you're inhabiting the environment. He's such a New York filmmaker, like movies like Do the Right Thing and Crooklyn, and like he gives you such a vivid sense of place, what it must feel like to exist on those blocks in these places. Like, they feel like life. Here it's not even like it doesn't even get any type of like sense of what America feels like as a setting or a locale, which, is
Well, it's
just
we discussed beforehand. I think it's like it's set in New York, shot in Louisiana. It's
yeah.
like not the same thing.
But
Yeah, it's
like, and I know that Chirac, a film that I really like, and Kevin does too, as he said earlier. I know that some people in Chicago said that's not what it's really like there, but like he's always trying. Setting is always very, very important to him, and I just felt like it was just lost in the shuffle here. In terms of like, yeah, like and then you think like I like I just I think that something like this that is such a it's not terrible misfire feels so much more like a bummer to me when I don't like it than something like if we knew that this American remake was directed by a hack or a nobody, we'd just kind of brush it off and be like,
Oh,
oh
man.
well, it was never gonna work. But with Spike Lee, it's just like, oh man, I really wanted to be a defender of this thing, and I just didn't make me feel that much at all. So
We could have got Oldboy by Mick G. So,
or I was gonna say Niels Arnoplev or something.
yeah, a true
Kevin's
auteur.
favorite movie, Alex Garland's Old Boy.
Fucking
Oh my
Christ.
gosh.
I would be picketing every theater in the area. That would be the worst.
I will say this though, out of all the film district movies we've covered so far, this is easily the best one. Which is saying something.
Says you.
So far, yeah. It's also just funny.
It's a pretty cursed run, man.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about something good in the next little bit, but it is just funny also. We're talking about it's like this is like maybe the one chance we're gonna have to talk about Spike Lee and like doing this show, and we're talking about Oldboy. It's a little funny to me.
I know that's
We're
kind
not
of what
gonna-
makes me sad is I'm kind of like, I mean, there's so much to talk about, don't get me wrong, but I'm just kind of like, this is like one of the two movies he's made that I don't like, and like everything else I think is just so visceral and electric, and
They lost
God,
so much money on this movie.
So much.
mean,
Which,
yeah.
what a way to go out, Film District.
I know, truly.
And it's also just such a
R.I.P. Bozo.
weird time. I mean, this is also just such an interesting time in like Lee's career where like he's like coming off of like Inside Man was like a big hit, but like his deck, like this is like a weird, like the 21st century, the first part of it is like really weird for him because it's like them. And interesting also the Guardian in their interview for him, it's interesting to just get like the temperature on like critically like what Lee was. Like they talk about inevitably, given the volume, there have been some duds. Everybody who knows his work well has their own list. Girl 6, She Hate Me, and Bamboozled often come up, but even those who know where's the work about are likely to have missed some gems too. It's interesting, like this is in 2013. Bamboozled has since gotten, isn't it a Criterion release now?
Yeah, Bamboozled is fucking amazing, by the way.
I need to see that.
And Girl 6
But,
is
like,
fine. Like, come on.
I need to see that. She Hate Me is the one I feel like has not been.
She Hate Me seems like an affront to God. Yeah.
You should
Right.
all
But then, like,
watch it though.
I
It is
am planning on
2.5
watching
hours
it.
long, Sam.
Oh, I'm gonna watch the hell out of that thing. Are you kidding? I mean, I've seen the sequence where Anthony Mackie's head is photoshopped on the sperm in an animated sequence. And I'm like, of course I have to see this. Like,
Well,
are
yeah,
you
and-
kidding?
Interesting you mentioned Anthony Mackie, around the same time that he's in the failed Showtime pilot that Spike Lee did with Ken Lon called Sucker Free City, which like was gonna be like a series, and then like the heads of Showtime switched around and they just like dropped it and like made it like a standalone film. You can watch it in like 240p on YouTube now. And then like Inside Man, I feel like Inside Man is like the big like hit that around that time, and then 25th Hour I think like is, I don't know how well that movie did, but I know people really like that one.
It took a little bit of time for people to come around on a masterpiece status for that movie, though. I think it was one of the first movies about 9/11 to come out. It came out like early 2002, or I think. So like it came out. It was one of the first movies to actually tackle 9/11 when I don't know if people were ready for that yet. I mean, I remember, I think even Ebert put it on his greatest movies list, but at the time he only gave it 3 or 3.5 stars. It was like,
Yeah.
it definitely was one of those it was a grower. And then, yeah, Inside Man was a huge hit, but then he followed it up with a series of flops because Miracle at St. Anna was his 2 hour and 40-minute, film about World War II that, nobody saw and still
I should
doesn't have a
revisit
great
that one.
reputation. I haven't seen it either, but I need to. And then,
I think Inside Man was his highest grossing movie.
Oh, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then Red Hook Summer, which I think is kind of an interesting movie, but also like has like some uneven stretches to it, dealing with troubling subject matter. Part of it's shot on iPads, so it has like kind of a weird look to it sometimes. And then he does Oldboy. Then The Sweet Blood of Jesus, which gets a very
Kickstarter.
small release, Kickstarter, not very well liked. And then I feel like just being like a kid who was like locked into film reviews at the time and everything, I feel like Chirac was like that got like generally pretty good reviews. And then Black Klansman's like the big mainstream hit, which like wide release, like you can see it in multiplexes. It gets good reviews, people like it, and it like wins him the Oscar for best screenplay. And he jumps into Samuel L. Jackson's arms on stage, and it's awesome.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CTNash91. Once again, thank you for listening.
Are you a film fan who loves the ultimate home video experience? Look no further than The Disconnected. Your host, Ryan Verrill, is your go-to source for the latest and most accurate information on home video releases, exclusive interviews with industry insiders and filmmakers, and has established a thriving community where every film and physical media enthusiast feels welcome. From hidden gems to blockbuster hits, The Disconnected brings you insider knowledge and a welcoming space to share your love of cinema. Watch every Thursday night at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific for the live announcements show, and follow The Disconnected on social media to stay updated. Subscribe to The Disconnected on YouTube or on the podcast provider of your choice, and dive into a world where every movie night is an adventure.
Thank you for listening. To hear more shows from the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, please select the link in the description